Hello, my name is Sharon. Welcome back to the studio. It's nice to see you here again. Today I have something a little unusual for you, something whimsical, a little character that I thought might interest you. Many of you will know I have a little black and white cat called Socks. He's a bit of a menace, runs around and flies about everywhere, always at a million miles an hour. Lots and lots of fur and hair and a tail that does this. He's just gorgeous. I thought today we'd turn him into a little character, a dragon cat perhaps. And this allows me to show you as many techniques as I can get into one particular painting. And just because I've used them doesn't mean that you have to. I would respectfully suggest that maybe you like to watch it first and then decide what you would like to do, and maybe then paint along with me for a second viewing. But we're going to cover everything that I can think of, from scratching the paper to using the paper wet, damp, running. We're going to put gold powder on here. We're going to texture a little bit of fur, and I want to show you how to put in highlights, lots and lots of masking fluid, and finally we're going to actually be using a bit of white gouache, and we're going to do some glazing for the wings. I want to show you how to paint see-through wings. All in all, it's one heck of a challenge, but I just thought that it would be fun. Dip in and out as you'd like to, but the most important thing is enjoy. Righto, let's get started, shall we? I've photographed my picture and I've put it on my iPad, and as long as I have it there next to me, I can look at it, I can enlarge bits and pieces that I want to see. It's well worth using your technology for this kind of thing. It really does work for you. I'll put that over here so that I can see it and use it for reference. Now you can see the pussycat, the drawing of the pussycat so far. And the first thing we need to do is to start masking it out. I'm going to use this blue mask, nice thin blue masking fluid, so that I can really use a good brush here and get into the nooks and crannies. And a little bar of cheap soap, hotel soap actually, don't tell anybody. And give this a good shake, make sure that you've got the blue dye up and around and through the mask, and we're going to use a brush and soap the brush right up to that ferrule, and this will preserve and just make sure that your brush doesn't suffer from this horrible gunky latex stuff. I'm going to just clean it, get rid of the bubbles like that, so the brush is loaded with soap. And if you want to make sure you always use the same one, I've just used nail varnish here around the ferrule of the brush, so I know that that's my masking brush. And now I'm going to just work into my pussycat. Be generous with it. So come in here. Don't be mean. I don't find that the stuff lasts that long anyway, so I make use of it when I have it. As long as it's this lovely pale blue, you're fine. When it goes a dark, dark turquoise colour, I'd get rid of it, because that's generally when it's starting to oxidise and it could go sticky on you. I want to mask out his ears and his little horns. And as I say, be generous, don't be mean with it. You're just masking out the outside edges of your pussycat, so that we can paint the background first and not have to worry about any great problems here with any of this. I want to come round his paddy paws. I'll use a thinner brush to come into the claws in a minute. So I'm just coming round here. I want to keep those nice and clean, so that I've got choices later with where I go with that. There is method to my madness. Let's do the bit that I can do. We'll use a thinner brush in a minute. There we are. Looking at the rest of it, what else do we need to do? This, not terribly concerned over this because this is going to be black. He's got a little black face and this will be black against a green background. It's not an issue. Not particularly worried about his bottom and his tail because again, this will have to be a light area. We need to think about this, everybody. This here is dark, which means that you need light against it. Light against dark, dark against light. It's the law. Therefore, this area of sky will have to, or green grass will have to be paler so that we can put his lovely dark tail in there. We need to think about that for later. This same applies really. These whiskers, this face on him, the fur on his face is going to be dark. Therefore, whatever's down and around here can't be too dark because it won't show unless we make the edges white. But having said that, thinking about that, we'll come back to that in just a second. I want to just tweak that. Something I would like to have a little bit of choice about is the kind of spines of his wings here. Therefore, I want to come in here and I'm just going to mask those out. I'm intending to plant some dandelion heads here, so there'll be one here. And I've done that quite deliberately because I want to break up this shape of this long line through here. Therefore, shatter that just here like this and that so that we might be able to see the wing underneath, but this is going to be a dandelion clock. This, I want to put this in quite solidly again so that I have choices about my highlights and my lowlights on this area. So just do that here, through there. Try and get rid of the bubbles as you work because these bubbles will actually pop and burst as they dry and the paint goes through them. So if you can get rid of the bubbles, that's a really good ploy. That, I'd like that to be clean there as well. Right, dandelion clocks, we need an odd number. So I intend to try and place one here, 2, 3, 4 and 5, okay? The wings are up through here. I'm going to just feel that as I go. If I rinse my brush and I now give it a really good wipe on my cloth, my brush is as clean as it was when I first started. So that is well worth knowing with the soap. The next thing I need to do is just twiddle the little claws. Therefore, small brush, and again, same applies. Pop the soap on. Get rid of the bubbles. Like that. And then I want to come in here and just tweak the ends of his claws. I want those to be lovely and sharp and clean because we're going to do those in something probably like a raw sienna. So I'd like those to look really lovely and sharp through there. That's great. Now what about all of this here? I said we'd come back to it. And we've got little whiskers on his chin. His whiskers are white. So again, they need to show up, don't they? We need to think about this, everybody. What are we going to do here? Light against dark, dark against light. If I take a rigger brush, so this is a lovely fine 0 rigger brush. These were invented originally by Turner for painting the rigging on ships, hence the name. Rigger brushes, I prefer them to be a nice acrylic brush because then they spring and they bounce. With a sable brush, sometimes if they're too soft, when you come through the work and you come away from the paper, it's still bent. That's hopeless. Therefore, a nice bouncy, springy nylon brush here works really well. And again, I'm going to soap it up, get rid of those bubbles. And what we want to do here is use this for our whiskers. I'm going to dip in and then get rid of the drip, and I want to use that at 90 degrees. It sounds cack-handed, but if I use it this way, I'll get a wider brush stroke, and I don't want it to be wide, I want thin, thin, thin. And I'm going to do this because these here, I want some white whiskers out into my background. This is where I'm going with this. The whiskers come from here, so you want to do this now because it gives you the trajectory. So from here, out through, woof. Oh, it's meow, isn't it? It's not a dog. So here, out through. Lovely long stroke. Don't fluff it, just go. Through, out. Again, I'm using my finger to balance myself, so up through. There we are. So we'll have some whiskers like that. And that gives us some beautiful white, clean paper white whiskers. We can put some more in later and we can do that with white. But for now, this will give us that actinic bright white, and that's just what we want. Same applies here. They have these eyebrow whiskers. So again, I want just a few out and through into this background, because they will show, they'll be beautiful. So out through here. Just a few here, because the rest are probably going to be up here on his wings. So just a few there. Not worried about this for now, we'll worry about that later. We might do those in the white, just to prove a point that we can do it. Now they also have little hairs on their chinny chin chins. I'm just going to put a few just through there. And then the next thing I'd like to do, we have I don't know what you call it, the hairs around his mane, around his face, that would be around his neck. And I would like just to, on the edges, put some hints of some little white ones, where the light is shining on there and just glinting. Just a few, please, not too many, because it will look strange, but just a few. We'll go over that, as I say again later, we'll do that with white. Tips of his ears, same applies. He's got long hairs on the tips of his ears. So I'm just going to pull some of those through there. Little hairs like that. Just a few. There we go. Because anything that we need to fiddle about with in a dress later, we can do that with white gouache, so that's fine. But for now, we've got enough of our pussycat to feel secure and to feel safe. The only thing I'm thinking about is here and here, he's definitely got a white. If you look at your picture, you'll see that he's got white moustache. So therefore, with that white moustache, that's going to be there, that's all right. And it's going to be here, so that's going to be against my background. So I think what I might do, just to make sure I'm safe, is that. So that there is absolutely no way my paint can come up and over and harm that in any way. We need to allow that to dry, and when that's dry, we can paint our background. Righto. For the background, I wanted to introduce you to this colour here. It's a Daniel Smith and it's called Cascade Green. And it does just what it says on the tin, really. It's two very heavy pigments, and when you put them on the paper, they separate. And you can get some lovely, lovely effects with this. And I thought that I'd just use it to introduce it to you so that you could see what it does. I'm also going to use some of this Schminky, this is Rich Pale Gold, it's a powder, and it's rather lovely, and that will give us some nice effects here in the edges against the dark. You don't need to use this, but again, I just wanted to use it to show you, and to apply that I'm going to use this spatula. And the other thing I have here, I said to you to use an orange stick, but this here is a porcupine quill. And you can buy these on eBay. Fishermen use them, they're floats for, you know, for catching fish. But you have one thick end and one very thin and sharp, and these are very, very good for scoring. We'll score some grasses on our paper later, so we'll use that too. I just want to really, really hit this picture with plenty of techniques. My paper, £140 Bockingford, and it's a knot, and I've got it really taped down well with this brown gum tape. It's bigger than I think I will want it, but it is much easier to cut into a picture to frame it than it is to suddenly decide that your picture's bigger than your paper and you run off the edges of the painting. That's really infuriating. This gives me the chance to decide, oh, I don't like this bit over here, I'm going to cut it off. Or this bit doesn't work, and you can bring the whole picture in and you can work it that way. Let's pop that aside and let's get stuck in. First thing I need to do is wet my background. I'm going to ignore the pussycat's tail and bottom, and I'm going to ignore the wings. Now don't panic. The wings I want to try with you and I to make these see-through. And to do that you have to paint what is there first. Therefore, with nice clean water and a large hake brush, I'm just going to come in and I'm going to dampen my paper. I'm just coming around the edges of my masking fluid up to the cat. So just bring it into his whiskers. Water everywhere. And we're looking for a shine on the paper, please. You want a shine. Look at it sideways so that you can see where you've been. If it looks matte, you haven't got water on there. So just bend down so that you can see where you've been. I've got some grease on my paper there. That must be a thumbprint. It's resisting the water. Never mind. That could be another dandelion clock. Up to the little claws and just over the edges of his muzzle like that. That's fine. Okay, I think I covered everything, covered all the angles, so to speak. Your paper will always dry more quickly around the edges, therefore it doesn't ever hurt just to give it a little bit more around those edges. I think you'll find that's probably because it's soaking into the brown paper and it will dry more quickly. I'm now going to discard the big brush because I'd like a little bit of control, and I'm going into a smaller hake this time. Here's my paints, and I'm going to just use a bit of everything. This is sap green. This is a beautiful, bright, lovely, warm yellow green. So I'm going to throw it in. Up to these little whiskers. That's fine. I'd like it to be a little bit paler through here, so we'll go with that there. And I want it to be paler through those wings, because then that means that you and I have the choices then to put a darker colour on top. It will work. This area I know I need it to be light, therefore I'm now going to go into the quinacridone gold. I'm painting right through his tail and his bottom, it's fine, because later on any colour that's residual like that will look as though it's a light shining. All these corners I need to be darker, so we'll think about that in a minute too. I'm now coming into this cascade green, and I look at the way that runs. Now this is called blossoming. Bring you in so that you can see it. Just 1 second. This is blossoming. This incredible, incredible way that this paint will do this. And it will all run into different colours. It's shattering already. I want some over here. It's the pigments reacting with each other, and it can be really quite exciting. And this is why I wanted to show you this colour. I know that I want darker colour along here, so again I'm going to come in. This is the cascade green again. You see how that's bled into blue and green. We'll leave it there. If the paint wants to do that, we're going to let it. And I'm just dropping colour. Corners darker. So now I'm taking, this is Prussian blue, and I'm going to really mix it. This is mucky palette now. That's the sap green. I'm going to throw in some quinacridone gold, and I'm really going to make my edges and my corners dark. This is dried, doesn't matter. I want some dark up in this corner. I like that bit of white, we're going to leave it. This little cat, I'm going to pull a little bit down through there, as though that's a tree or something, and you'll see that through his wings. How about that through there as well? There you go, look, why not? We're winging it, everybody. We're just doing this and seeing what it does and what we can create with it, so it's fine. I want to come in there now, and I'm just going to bring some grasses up through here. Right, now stop, we've reached that stage. What we're going to do now is clean the brush. I'll try and do that without wobbling the table. And I'm going to dry the brush, because I want to soften that in there. I want to darken it a little bit more, so again I'm coming in with a little bit more paint. Let's go in there. Do that. Because that would be dark under his chin, under his claws. Those claws are only going to show up if we've got dark against the light. So again, under there, this is just Prussian blue. And then I want to come in with a clean brush and a fairly dry brush, because I want to mop up. Mop it up, just use your brush now as a mop. Doesn't matter that it's in the cat, it really, really doesn't matter. Get rid of the drips, because these will create cauliflowers. I want cauliflowers where I want cauliflowers, not where it wants cauliflowers. And the next thing I want to do here is to use one of my brushes. I'm going to go for a number 4, I think, because now I want to come through, and this is the Cascade Green, and I'm just going to pull a few grasses up through here. Use some of the wet colour to pull that through too. So again, I don't want too much of this. The fact that it is diffused, and that's because it's wet, means that it pushes it into the distance. Oh, look, we could pull a few through here. That, don't worry about it, I'll get rid of that in a minute. Up through here, some through there, and just pull them. And because the paint's wet, it's bleeding, it's doing its own thing. Look at the way that is all just sort of going into blue and brown there. Look, fabulous. This is what I like about this colour. We might have to turn that into a flower or something, you know, everybody, later on. It's really quite dramatic, isn't it? So there we have that. And the next thing I want to do now is take some, one of these. This is my porcupine quill, and I'm going to mark my paper. Now, honestly, if you're doing this, this is once only. You don't get to go back and do anything with that to change it. This is it now. So if you're going to do that, whichever end you use, you can only do this once. My paper's still wet, still shiny, so that means I can still work it. I've still got the choices, still working. Okay, so I've got some grasses, I've used this for that. I could, if I want to, use that to pull in some branches from my tree. What we're doing here is we're actually damaging the paper, and the paint is running into the damaged paper. And it leaves this depression, this, I don't want to bring it into his tail. So that will give you some twigs on the trees that are coming into your picture. So again, as much or as little of that as you want, and it's going to depend on the timing. Timing is everything. It's still shiny, it's still wet. That means I can go in here now with my table salt and I'm going to pour some in my hand so that I have control. And I think I want, in that dark area, that's going to be one of my seed heads for a dandelion. This is all wet and dark, so again I'm going to go in there. I might not be able to have as many as I thought I wanted, because purely and simply because I have to go to the right areas of the paper and look for where it's dark. It's not going to work if it's light. So in here, there, and I might put a little one down here somewhere. 1, 2, 3, that's 4. So let's think about something maybe over here. You have to put your salt on when your paper is still at this wet stage. If the paper has taken the colour into itself, there's no way you're going to get it back out. So you need to get the salt on there when you're at this sort of stage. And the only other thing that we can do now, this is slowly, the colour is going into the paper and it is slowly drying. The only other thing I can do at this stage, I know that if I were to put my finger on there and lift it off, I would have paint on my finger and it would leave a mark on the paper. It's reaching the damp stage. Now is a really exciting time to come in here and to do your own thing. We can. Oh, so much to do. What shall I do first? Panic. We can take paint and we can flick. We can come in with our gold. I want to do that really before I think it dries too much. So here's my gold powder, and I'm going to use this little palette knife here, and I just want to come in and through some of these areas introduce a little bit of my gold. Don't need too much, and if you put it in the dark areas, of course it's a lot more effective than it is anywhere where it's going to be light. So I wouldn't bother with light areas, just pop it in where it's lovely and dark and it'd be exciting. And whilst we're at this damp stage, the other thing that we can do, which is really effective, I'm going to take my rigger brush, wet it. Now, not dripping wet. So all I've done is just put it against the side of the water pot. And now if I come up through here, water will push the paint away. It will push the paint away. And that means that we can have some really effective grasses paint up through like this. Now this only works at this exquisite stage. Once it starts to dry, that doesn't happen. It just works now, just now when it's still damp. And again, as I say, please don't use too much water, because if you do, you'll find that it won't work. It will just make one great big white blob. You'll land up with something like this here, a cauliflower. So we don't want to do that. I just want these fine grasses. They're all textures that turn this whole background into a fairy wonderland. And there's only one moment that you can do this and get this effect, and this is the time now. So we've just got to hit it right. It's too wet there, so it's not going to work. It's too wet. All it's done is just become a puddle. So the paint is still too wet. This has to be at that stage where it is just thinking about drying. And look how effective that is. This is working okay, so the salt's coming out all right, so there will be quite good seed heads. Happy with that. So that's rather good. And the only other thing that we can do here to give this all a bit of texture down here, we're talking seed heads and all sorts of exciting stuff. Let's come in and we're going to take a bit of the Cascade Green, and we're going to take a bit of the Prussian Blue, and I'm just going to splatter. Just a little bit, not too much. So we can do that, and that will give us some texture down here. And these could be maybe little flowers, So we've got two different sorts of texture there as well, because where the paint is dry, this is going to be just blobs, definitive round blobs, here and here. But over here it's diffused because this is still damp. And the same would apply if we're very careful and you come into these areas here where it's still damp and you did that with water, and you will land up, we'll push it back and you'll land up with cauliflower blobs, which are fantastic because these of course are going to look like baby seed heads. I don't know if it'll work over here, it might be a bit too wet, too dry. We are. So this is all down to timing. We can try it up here. Yes, look, that's going to work. So again, seed heads growing up, we'll have to have a little think about those later to make sure that we put some little teeny bits of grasses coming up to them so that they have stems, they're not just there. Is that going to work there? Yes. So you see, this is all nonsense that you can play with to create these effects. And to be honest with you, this is up to you when you have paint in your palette and you don't want to waste it. Use it to play like this so that you can see what it's going to do, how it's going to work. And it's just a good way to experiment with your paints and to know what they're going to do and at what stage you can go in. The only thing we can do with that now is leave it alone, and then we'll see how it all works, and we'll come back when it's all bone dry and we can go back into it. If you decide that this has reached a stage that you like and you don't want it to keep working, because as long as it's wet it will keep working, and if you don't want it to, put a hairdryer on it. Now, stop it. That's the only way to deal with that. You put the hairdryer on it at that point. Okay, see you in a minute. Hello, here we go again. I've dried my picture. We've got rid of the salt, and it's worth pointing out here that if you have a wet day, it's raining outside, and the salt will not dry. It sits there in this horrible wet little puddle because it continues to take the moisture out of the atmosphere. Salt is hygroscopic and it just keeps on drawing water into itself. And if that's the case, I did need to put the old hairdryer on this and really get it dry. And you just rub it off with your fingers to get rid of it. I need to remove now the rest of the masking fluid so that we can get on with our pussycat. And just let me think about it logically, where I'm going with it. This area, I'm going to paint it from the back forward. So really the thing that's furthest away is my pussycat's tail and his bottom. And that means logically for me, it would be a really, really good idea if I were to leave this masking fluid here so that I can just paint straight up to it. Job done, bosh, it's sorted. Shall we do that before we get rid of the masking fluid? Let's just try it. I'm going to use good old Payne's Grey. It's a solid dark. I would say to you, if you're going to use Payne's Grey, please use the artist's watercolour, not the Cotman, not a student's colour, because the artist's watercolour will bleed into a blue. It's made with the same pigments as indigo and it will give you a nicer look, whereas I find that some of the others really are neat tarmac. I don't like them at all. I'm taking my number 8 round sable brush, and with this I'm simply going to come in here, pick up my Payne's Grey, and I want a good thick solid covering because this little cat is black. And coming in, let's just do zigzaggy, jiggity jaggedy bits of fur on his tail to start with. And out here, no great techniques here at the moment. And I just want to come in. He's got a really fluff ball tail. We call him fluff ball, fur ball. And we're going to get that in there, and then I want to block it in more solidly here. And in the middle of that tail now, with a clean brush and a little drop of water, I just want to come down and introduce a lighter area. And this is why I wanted that gold all the way through, so that it shines just through the middle part of his tail like this. I'm just going to pull some of that through, and we'll put more detail in that later. In the meantime, we're going to go into the edges of his tail with a much finer brush, and here you can use whatever you're comfortable with. I'm coming in, this is a number 2, and I want to just come in and take the paint that's there and put it. We'll come in here later and we'll add more layers with this, but just for now, let's do the thicker, larger bits of hair. Don't want too much dry brush work like this. In actual fact, now because it's drying, I need to come back into my Payne's Grey. Don't want dry brush strokes like this, don't like it very much. It's not what I'm looking for. So your paint needs to be single cream thickness here. Still haven't got it right. Come on, Sharon, get your act together, girl. No. There you go, that's a bit better. And keep the brush loaded. And just flick out some hair. No, I don't like it. Now, you know why this is happening to me. My brush hasn't got enough hair, not enough reservoir for the brush stroke that I'm making. That's why I'm getting this dry brush look. Not enough paint in that brush. It cannot be carried in that length of hair. What I'm going to have to do is come in. This is my rigger brush, and this is a 0 rigger brush. You can go wider than this. You can get 1s, and now I can come in here and I can get the brush strokes that I need. So come in. You see, this is because the rigger brush is carrying so much more paint, and it can create that long stroke that I want. There you go. So I want this boy's scruffy long tail. He walks up and down the garden, and this tail sort of shakes as he walks like this, and as he walks all these bits fall out of it where he's been sitting down. All these bits of twig and bits of fir tree and the odd leaf. I'm waiting for the day when a mouse falls out of it. I'm sure it will one day. There we are. So now we can go back into this side. And again, I'm using this brush loosely. I'm holding it right up here so that I can flick the brush strokes. If I go in here, that gives me lots of control. I don't need it at this stage. I want it to be loose and floppy. Make sure that every time you put the brush down, it's on the black and it comes out of the black, because otherwise you're going to land up with hairs that don't belong to anything. They're just going to be there and no roots on them. So I want this to be, there we go. So there, we're going to put lots and lots of hair in. Leave this alone for now because it's wet. If we go into that and we interfere with that at the moment, we'll find that that will mark and cauliflower. So just leave it be for a while. We will, in the meantime, come down into the cat's body and we'll deal with this area here. So same applies. I want to keep that aside for now. And this that we did here, there are 2 ways to do that. If you want to, you can wet the middle first, that light area, and then you can come in with your paint on either side, and you can allow that to happen, let it blossom and bleed, and then you can manipulate it how you want to manipulate it. Now please be brave with your paint, because you've noticed with the background watercolour always dries up a lot lighter. It will dry up to 30% lighter than the colour you first put down. If you want this cat to be black, you have to put this dark, rich colour down. If we don't, you're going to find that he will be a grey cat. What I would like to do is just put a bit of highlight across his bottoms. This is a thirsty brush, it's clean, and then I'm going to dry it and then come in through here. This is what we call a thirsty brush because it's coming in and it's wicking out colour. Not worried about that because I've got to make this bottom fluffy anyway. So here we go, just come through and lift a bit of the colour out. If you go in there with a wet brush, the water will run into drying paint and then you'll find that you'll have a cauliflower bottom, and we don't want that either. But what I do want to do is come in again with my rigger brush, and I'm just going to break up this fur here. Just break it up and give the impression of all these little hairs. Again, hold the brush on the end so that you've got real freedom of movement. And I'm using my hand like this to move the brush. I'm not using my wrist, I'm not doing this, I'm just using my fingers to wiggle the brush. There you go, and then that gives you fairy catkins. Again, leave this alone, and all of this, I'm going to go back in later and we will texturise that then. So just for now, we're leaving it be. Let's have a little think and a look now at our masking fluid. I would like to remove, this is a mask away, have you seen one of these? They're incredible, it's like the crepe sole from a shoe really, isn't it, if you look at it and understand it. But this is fantastic to get this stuff off, because all you need to do is come in here and rub with this instead of your poor fingers. And all of a sudden it all comes off, and instead of it all going on my carpet here in my studio, I can pull it off and I'm straight in there. Thank you very much indeed. Let's come in here and do that. I don't want to touch that at the moment because of this. I'm going to let it dry. I want to come in and take this from his hairy ears. We got a bit of paint on that there when we moved through our background, but it's not the end of the world because he's going to have a little black ears anyway, so it doesn't matter. Just move that up there because I want to come in now and I'm going to paint his ears here. Now the claws and the paws can be cleared like that. And then I'm just going to have a little bit of think about his whiskers. The whiskers out here in the open sky, I don't need to worry about those, so they can go. I'm actually going to leave the remnants of the masking fluid on his face so that these whiskers will be white against his black fur. Okay, and funnily enough, I didn't do that here. I have no whiskers here. I painted them from the side of his face. So I'm going to do that, and I will show you how I will adjust that next. I'm going to go back to the masking fluid. So that's your mask away, really rather quite neat. Back to my rigger brush and back to our soap. And I want to come in here. I use a lot of masking fluid and I layer it through the painting as I go, and I work each area when I get there, and I find that a lot easier. Just use this as a tool for yourself. What I want to do now, here are the whiskers on the outside. So now with my masking fluid I'm coming in from that whisker, now I'm coming into the face, so that I'm going to get that continued white line through the fur. I've got another whisker here, there it is, comes through, and these go to these little sort of follicles on the cat's muzzle, and they run in lines. If you look at your cats, they definitely run in lines. Therefore, when I bring that hair through here, I want to pull it through into one of these little follicles. This one's coming up, I'm going to cross over that one, and that's coming in down to there. That's that one, this is this one, there's another one above. So let's just think about that. Will be coming through there, through, follow the trajectory. Okay, so that gives me an idea here. Now we can create some more, because cats, particularly this Moggy, has lots and lots of whiskers. So I'm going to continue painting some through the black fur. And these will show beautifully when we put that dark on and we remove the masking fluid. These will all come into their own. So just come through and just pull them through. Lots and lots of whiskers, so that's cool. Okay. I'm a bit wary about doing this area at the moment because this is all still wet, so I'm going to leave it alone. Let's now just deal with his eyes, and we're going to deal with his nose and the colour inside of his ears. Let's do that next. Okie dokie. Masking fluid goes away. This needs to dry. And I suggest that the fastest way for me to go about that is to probably put the hairdryer on it. Although I think, actually, I can come in and just do his ears. Are you up for his ears? Let's do his ears. A very good colour mix for the inside of Pussycat's ears, if you've got a dark cat, and for his nose indeed, is to take a little tiny smidgen of alizarin crimson and add a touch of burnt umber. Bit more, bit more. And that gives you quite a good kind of, cats have, under this kind of fur, tend to have chocolate skin, chocolate coloured skin. But we need the red to give us the idea of the blood under our cat's, you know, the blood that's there under the skin. And for this area here, I'm going to come in and paint it quite darkly in there, right next to his head, and then with water, dab, and then come in and spread the colour and pull it. Pull it out, pull it up, so that we have that colour there. I've just itched over the edge, so I'm coming in to pick that up. Leave that alone, let it dry, come back into the other side, and the same applies. Wet it when you put that first layer of colour down. So that into there, water, dab, come back and just blend that in. Like that. Okay. Right, that needs to dry before we do anything else with it. So what we'll do is we'll just come in and we're going to lay that colour over the whole of his little nose. Just like that. And cats have this little lip here, this tiny little pink bit of lip. So we're just going to fill that in. Okay, what I'm going to do now is blow dry it, and then I will come back to you. How's that? I've dried the pink ears and I've removed this masking fluid from here. And what I need to do now is just darken some more this area through here. So now we're glazing. I'm using a smaller brush. This is a number 6. Again, a rosemary sable, and I'm coming up through there. I rinse and I dab, and then I come into the paint from this side, the side I want to blend, and I just pull my brush along it like that. Let's do the same on the other side. So we load up and we come through here, put the paint in through there, I rinse and I dab, and then I come into the side that I want to blend and I pull it through. There we go. My little lad has got a black nose, but the reason I put that in there first is because when I now take some Payne's Grey, I'm not going too thick with this either, not too dark everybody, Payne's Grey in a wash to glaze over the nose that I've painted. A bit thicker than that, I think. And then you should still see the pink nose underneath. There we go. And that gives you a cleaner finish than trying to paint Payne's Grey into the pink. But we can still see the pink underneath. That's the plan. I'm going to bring you in a little bit so that you have more face. So hold on tight, you're going for a little bit of a ride. There we go. Okay, bit more, bit more. There we are. So it gives you an idea of where I'm going to go with the face now. Let's bring that in a little bit closer so that you can see some of the palette. And what I want to do here again, I'm going back to this masking fluid again. You'll be used to masking fluid by the time we're finished, eh? Because now I want to come into the face and just clear a few of the details. I don't want to make a mess with the eyes and the teeth. So here we go, tiny brush this time. I'm loading up. Soap first, masking fluid. And this is not a pupil. This is going to be a highlight in the eye. There's the other one. And so is this strange triangle shape here. I want that as well to be a little bit of a ka-ching of highlight in the eye. There. I'd like to, for the time being, just cover the teeth because I don't want to mess them up with dark paint at all. That would be a disaster. And the other thing I want to do here, I'm going back to my rigger brush. I want that fine, fine, fine control here. Or, if you have it, you can always use, this is a map pen. And I can just dip straight into this, and my little boy on his cheeks here has got little white hairs. Just got some little tiny white hairs, and I want to put those in so that I'm as realistic as I can be with him. And he also has just a few little spits up his nose here. And the easiest way to do that is to just do this with masking fluid. Okay, we could indeed be doing that later with white gouache, but I've got other things I want to do with white gouache, so for now that's going to do me. And of course with a pen like this, all you've got to do is wipe that clean. I've got some longer strokes to do for his eyebrow hairs here, and I can't do those with that pen because it wouldn't hold enough masking fluid for me to be able to do the full length stroke. Therefore we're going back to our brush, our rigger brush, and I want to load up, and I'm coming into this area here because right from the corner of their eye, let me get the photograph quickly, from the corner of their eye here, this is where their little eyebrow hairs come from. Therefore I want to put that in now before I start throwing black paint around. Thank you very much. I'm going to come into here, and I'm going to come up and up. And through here. And that will remain beautifully white when we paint him. I've got to bear in mind, look, there it is. There's a hair that I painted in earlier, so I've got to follow that line through there, from there into here. That's fine. And then I have the same through here. Now you're thinking, what about that? She's painted over it. Ah, no, don't worry. I want to show you that later. Show you what we do with that later. Let's look at these. Have I got these right here? Because there's a hair coming through there. So just follow it for the trajectory. That'll come through there. there's one through here, and there's one there. So let's do that to that. Okay, jolly good. Okay, let's do these glorious little eyes. They're green, and it's very, very important that we paint our eyes as pale as we can to start with, because we all get so excited about the eyes that we get carried away with ourselves, and it means, unfortunately, that we then land up putting too much colour on, and we wonder why the eyes look like two black holes, particularly when we land up putting the irises and the pupils in. Therefore, my first thing to do, I'm going to take a very, very pale green. So that's my yellow, that's my quinacridone gold. And if I add, let's try a little bit of our sap green, and that gives us this acid green, but I want it thin colour, thin. Let's try. I'm going to paint the whole thing. We'll put the pupils in afterwards. So I'm coming round and through, and I want to put that colour through like this. And then with a damp brush, I'm going to just make this a little bit lighter. We always get so excited with the eyes, and I've made so many mistakes in the past and I've regretted it bitterly, so I just want to be quite circumspect to start with. So pop them in, make sure they're not too dark, because then whilst they're still marinating nicely like that, I can come in with a slightly darker green. So this is my... Now this is everybody, this is where we start working with mucky palette. This is a colour that we use for the background, and I want to put that up there, under there, because of course up through here is where we would have the shadows from his eyelids. Put the colour in, scumble it about a bit, keep the brush clean. It's always about hygiene, keeping that brush clean. And every single time you come back to your paper, you rinse, you dab. You don't ever go back to the paper without a dab. Because if you do, you'll find that you put too much water on your paper, and then you wonder why the watercolour runs away with you. Because it's a stinker watercolour, it does what it wants to do. But this time, you are in control. There we are. So you can see this is where the pupil's going to be here. Just here. So for now, I just want that to be lovely and wet, and we'll just leave that as it is. Lucid, limpid, light, pale. All right, and we'll worry about all of the rest later. What we want to do in the meantime is come back and think about some of the other areas that we can work. We're going to jump around a bit, but of course that's because let me put that there so you can see it. That's because we've got to wait for this to dry before we can go near it. So bit by bit by bit, everybody, just a little bit at a time. Patience. If I come into his ears, and this is my Payne's Grey, I would like to bring that down along the edges of his ears like this. That's the fur line along his ears. And we can put that in, and we can rinse our brush, we can dab our brush, and if we come in on the ear side and you just gently do that, that softens that whole edge and makes that ear look quite nice. So same down here, this is going to be a bit cack-handed, because I'll show you, I want to put the dark all the way along there. Oh, now you can see those whiskers. You see those whiskers just coming through there. I rinse, I'm using two brushes, rinse and dab, and I have to come in to the side that I want to blend. There you go. And that all just bleeds into the ears and gives you that lovely soft edge. That's just what we want. I want to tweak his nose a little bit, so I'm coming into there and down here. Where's our light coming from? Well, it's behind us, so realistically our cat would be in deepest, darkest silhouette. That won't do, will it? We're going to have to imagine that we've got some residual light coming in, and tradition says from the right hand side. Okay, so that means that's a little round bump, that's a little round bump, that would be the side there that's in shadow. So let's come in and just shade that a little bit. There we go. And cats have these very, very dark little nostrils, so they'd have a little dark itty bit there, and that little dark itty bit there, like that. And whilst that dries, we're going to jump back into the eyes, because this is the white of his eyes, and that would have shadow as well underneath the pupil, underneath the eyebrow here and up here, and we'd have some darkness and maybe a little bit of pink in there. So, teeny bit of Payne's grey, thin Payne's grey. What happens if we come in there and we do that? And again with the other brush, rinse, dab, and then I'm going to come in that way and just nudge it like that. And this side I'm going to do the same here, so dark in there like that. And then with this brush I'm going to come in and nudge it, budge it and smudge it, well known solicitors, you know. And then in here I want to make that a little dark there next to the eyeball, the actual iris, but I'm going to pick up the pink, this pink from the nose and the ears. I just want to drop it in next door when it's still wet, and that gives us that pink middle in his eye, that little tear duct. Whilst this is here and I'm thinking about the pink, I want to curve that, and because that tooth lays shadow, it would put shadow there and there would be shadow there. So again, rinse and dab and come in and you nudge and budge, and then you come in that side and you nudge and budge that way too, so that it gives you that little bit of darkness underneath. With his eyes, we're going to do a little more to that. We want to make them even more dramatic. I'm coming back into these edges and I'm going to make that even darker. So I'm taking, this is the Daniel Smith colour now, but I'm not going to cover all of that area. I'm just going to do probably just a third of it, like that. And then with the other brush, I come in and I just nudge and budge that. So I've still got the colour underneath that I put in first, but I've got the darker look there as well. I'm just wondering if I can get you even closer for that. Let's try that, everybody. So again, up into here, I'm going to put the dark green in there. And then with the clean brush, damp brush, just do that so that you get that extra bit of shading there. I want to do the same on the inner edges of the eye as well. So into here, ka-chink in there. And do one at a time because it'll dry before you get to it. And once it's dry, you won't move it. So I'm going to just come back. Move that, that's it, and then I'm coming into this side and putting that in there, and again I just nudge it, budge it and smudge it. There we go. So that's done. The other thing I want to do is really make a song and dance about the outer edge of the iris. I'm using that same green. This is the Daniel Smith green, because it kind of, as you've seen in the rest of the picture, it bleeds into this cerulean blue. And if that might, it might not, but it might happen in our eye, that would be really super cool. So I'm coming around the outer edge now of the whole of the iris like that, and with a clean damp brush just gently come in and just soften that. Okay, like that. It's all down to water control, watercolour, you know. It's all down to the water and how much you have on that there brush. So round here, the outer edge. And incidentally, this is exactly the same way that I would paint a human's eyes, but of course on a much smaller scale. Now my brush was dirty. I went in with a second stroke with the brush dirty, and that's what happens. Don't do it. So I smack my own wrist there. Stupid thing to do. My fault. Okay. So if we're happy with that, the only other thing that I might decide that I want to do is I do have a little bit of cadmium orange on my palette. This gorgeous bright orange, and I'm just going to take a smidgy of that. I'm just going to drop it into each eye like that, and then with the damp brush come in, nudge it, budge it and smudge it, and it gives you an extra glow in that eye. That's it. There we go. So when that's dry and we paint the pupils in onto that next, that will look quite amazing. Oh, it's exciting. It's starting to happen, isn't it? Okay. Where do we go now? I want to sharpen up that middle of his nose because that's a bit messy. So I'm coming in, tip of the brush, and I'm just going to run that down there like that so that that smartens that up. I want these to be a little bit tighter. So in and round, and I want them to be sharp and smart. And with that, I'm just going to dry the brush on my cloth, and then I'm going to come in and texturise it, because cats have this incredible little kind of spotty skin, don't they? And dogs on their noses. So just give it the tip of the brush, not too much paint, so just get rid of it on your cloth. And give it a bit of texture. Can we see that? Just a little bit of texture. So it's almost barely not there, but you will be able to see that. What we do need to do maybe with our Payne's Grey is just come in and shade a little bit more down there. So damp brush, literally, really damp brush, lots of dry it lots. There we go. So that curves that down and round and into his face. So that's where we want to go with that. We know, come out a little bit, I'm just going to bring it out a tiny bit. We know that the inside of his mouth is going to be just dark. So I'm coming up into that. I'm just going to put that in through there. Okay. Allow all of that to dry, so whilst that dries, let's skip back up here. Back to our eyes. And I'm using the thin brush, this is my number 2, and I want, this is sap green, and I'm just going to come through this eye. And I haven't got a lot on that brush. Can you see that, everybody? I just want to pull that through, just a few little striations to make the eyes look really, I mean the eyes look quite manga in this, don't they, like the Japanese cartoons, but that's fine because this is your focal point, this is what you're looking at, this little cat's face and those eyes, that is what you're looking at. So for now we've got to make them look stunning. We are going to go in there now and we're going to put pupils in. So hang on to your seats. This is going to be a voyage because we now have to make sure that we get this perfectly round curve. I'm coming in and I'm following my pencil line. It doesn't matter that I go up into the face because that's all going to be black anyway. Ooh, I've gone off a bit there. So lay that in, lay it in. How about the other eye? Here we go. In, down, round, up. Lovely sharp edge. I want a nice sharp edge. And we infill. And when we take out those highlights, that should be really quite something. And it's funny, isn't it? You put the eyes in and suddenly you start to see the creature that you want to react with. It's suddenly arriving, it's nearly there. Here we are again. Eyes are done, and the next thing I think we need to do is paint up the spines of the wings and to put in some of the membrane of the wing. The problem with that, as I see it, I've got a couple of obstacles in my way. Let me bring you in just a tad so that you can see where we are. Not too much. I'm going to bring you down. There we are. There we are, and then I can bring you in a little more. I've got an ear in the way, and I've got a little horn in the way. The easiest thing to do is just put some masking fluid on there, and with this ear, a stroke across here. And although this has been painted, as long as you just swipe the masking fluid straight down there, you don't fluffy brush it and move the paint underneath, I've masked out that part of the ear. Job done, sorted. I can now paint right up to it and nudge it and not worry about it. This is ideal, really, isn't it? The next thing we're going to do then is paint in one of these long strokes. How do we go about that? Well, we've got to seriously consider where we are with this. The underneath of this would be dark, because if our light is coming from this area through here, this would be dark and in shadow. The light would be on the top edge, but we've got to be sensible about where the light will fall on it. If we make this too light, you're going to lose definition here. Be hopeless. And here, of course, big issue, because you've got dark, light, dark. What are we going to do there? What are we going to do? We'll think about that one in a minute. Let's do this. A couple of ways to approach it. I am going to put water just inside that edge along there. I'm going to treat it in the same way that we did this. Water through there so that I can come into my Payne's grey. If I put that there, you can see it, can't you? Yes. I'm going to come into my Payne's grey, and I know that I want to make this edge dark. That's fact, I know it. That's going to bleed into the water, and I also know that I need a dark edge along the top edge to make it stand out and show. Here we go, smaller brush, and I'm just going to edge that like that. There we are, and just leave that area there. Beautiful. This is where our dandelion head's going to be. I'm just putting the brush in water, and with that, dab that a bit. I don't want too much water on there. And I'm just going to come through, more water, and if I just bleed that into the dandelion head, it will make it look as though it is going behind it, like that. Okie dokie. Let's do the other edge out through here, same way. Water just inside. Don't put it right up to the edge, because if you do, you'll lose your hard sharp edge like this. Then we go into our Payne's grey, and I know that I want that bottom edge to be dark and solid and definite, but I also want that along the top edge here. So if I come in with my thinner brush and I just run it through, and if that's too light for you, rinse your brush, get rid of all the drips, don't want it too wet, and then just come in and smudge and nudge and budge until you're happy. Okay, don't like the bottom edge there, everybody, because I've gone a bit wibbly wobbly. So through there, and here, dark, and then just with a damp brush come in and soften, and just besmirch those edges so that you lose them and they're undefined and you don't really know what's what and where it is. And that's what we want. We want it all to just kind of flow into each other. Up here, light again is going to be along this top edge, and you can't leave that light because it would be nonsense. It wouldn't read at all. You wouldn't be able to understand any of that. It would just be rubbish. Therefore, we need to come in here. And again, I'm going to wet just almost to the edge, down through there, down to his head. And then I want to solidly paint in this side. So let's do that first. I want a nice hard edge down there which is uniform and straight down to the cat's head. Pull it across so that it meets the water like that. And then that's really worked out well, hasn't it? It looks good. I need to just define the edge. Just define it. I'm going to come in gently, gently down here. Like this. Oh, tilt, stop. Stop. Because you've reached this area now where it's dark. It wouldn't make sense, it wouldn't read, so hold on for a minute. What we're going to do first is just soften that a little, because that's just a bit too hard, don't like it. Just soften it. I've got this grey on the brush, might just pick up a little bit more, and all I'm going to do is just grey that. Alright, that's all you need to do. You just need a little bit of shade down there. That's it. That's it. So the same applies now for this side. We've got to do the same down here. We'll tidy that up in a minute. Leave it for the minute because it's wet. Can't touch it when it's wet. And what we're going to do with this here is just dampen that. Not right up to the edge. I take a teeny little bit of Payne's Grey from the edge of the palette, and I just want to do that so that it gives you that edging colour, just a bit of colour on the edge. So that's it. We've got to leave that until it's dry, and clean my hands because I managed to get that all over myself. Hopeless, absolutely hopeless. Okie dokie. Now whilst that dries, we've got to move on and go somewhere else. We've got to jump about all of the time. This is all dry down here now, so let's have a little bit of an effort down here. I want to come in and have a twiddle with his muzzle. This is all going to be white because he's got a white muzzle. But we need to think, he's got a moustache here and here, but this is dark underneath. This area here, we need to just rationalise it, because if we leave it, it's dead flat, you're hopeless, 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 hopeless. Therefore, using a little bit of Payne's Grey, I'm going to bring you in a little bit, everyone, so that you can see. Using a little bit of Payne's Grey and some more. I'm just using the edge from the colour. I want to come in here and introduce some grey there. Rinse, dab, blend. And blend. And I also want to curve his cheeks. So where this curves under, here and here, there we go. Look at that. Now you see that's hopeless, isn't it? We can see immediately that that doesn't read. You can't see the difference there. We've completely and utterly lost our definition, and the only route to that, because that is definitely dark down there, it's curving down, is to come in, this is Payne's grey, and put that in there, and then with your bigger brush just blend. Blend, blend, blend. There we go. Okay. And I think I'm just going to put a little bit darker paint down there too. So we've got these little chubby cheeks smiling away, saying, I'm up to mischief, look at me. Nothing unusual there then. Now, this muzzle curves into his nose. It curves in, it does this. Therefore, we're going to do the same thing in there. We're going to take a bit of Payne's grey and just nudge it into there. And with a damp brush, clean, damp brush, just smudge that in there as well. And that gives us a bit of shadow into there. So that curves that little bit of a moustache that he's got going. Okay, you see these claws? This is easy. We take some raw sienna, but that's very, very yellow and bright. And if we add some burnt umber, it knocks it back to quite an interesting colour that works quite well for bone. We're talking about if you were interested in skulls and you know, like sheep's skulls, some people like to draw those. This is the kind of colour that you'll be looking for that. If I put that there, you can see where I'm going. And I've tried it here on these two claws and it's working really, really well. We need to put that colour there down and around the sheath where the claw comes out of the paw. And this claw is coming up towards us and then back down and away, curving down. We want the colour and the shading on both ends of this claw. So there and here. Let's go to this paw. I want a bit more brown in that, I think. I'm going for a bit more of the burnt umber. Let's try that. Where this comes out of his paw, where it comes out of the claw sheath, in there, and the shadow is underneath the claw. So with this one, we're coming in and we're going to just blend like that. And lift a little bit more out of that because I think that's a bit too dark. Okay, next thing, here, round there, and then down and in and underneath, like so. I'm going to rinse and dab and then blend. There we are. Good stuff. Are you seeing what I'm doing, everybody? Let me just lift you in a little bit so that you can see some more. There we are. And finally around there and then down into the claw point. And I'm going to do that. I come up into the colour and nudge into it. And then same applies there. Don't often, anybody, come into the colour and pull it out. I like to go into it and I like to nudge it from the side that I'm blending. There we are. Happy with that? Yes, good stuff. All right, whilst we're there, shall we do this particular little horn? Same applies. Using this same colour, light from this angle here. Therefore, I want my darkness this edge. And where it's in his head, there would be shadow. This is ear along here. So therefore I'm just going to pull it through there, and then I come in and I blend like that. Okay, and the other one, getting the masking fluid off helps, you know. There you go. So with this one, same applies round here, down into there, along there, and I'm just going to blend that like that. Now, interesting to note that I needed that colour around the tip of that particular horn there because of my light and shade there. That needs to stand out against this, and in actual fact I also need to do that probably to make that stand out against this. The whole thing is again thinking about light against dark, dark against light. How are you going to work it? Now as you're up in this area here, we're going to just work on these where the wings come into the back, and what I need to do there is just smarten it up and tidy it up a little bit. I want to come into this area here and tighten that whole edge up with Payne's Grey because that's a mess. Smarten it all up. Same on this side, Payne's Grey up through, make it tight, make it sharp. Okay, and then we need to soften this, and the best way to do that is to find yourself a hard little brush. I use this little stubby brush for my bullying, and I want to have that damp, and I'm going to take this dark colour here and I'm going to just agitate all of it. So we get rid of the hard line, and then we use a clean brush to just soften that darkness that's there. Just soften it through there. And then here we're going to come in and the same applies. Agitate this edge. There you go. And then I want to come in and just blend that there. Funnily enough, I'm sitting here talking to you and I can hear my husband talking outside to this particular cat who's just come in out of the rain, absolutely drowned. Absolutely soaked. So he's been taken off to the garage for a good brush down and a going with the towel. He's a monster, I'm telling you. Okie dokie, let us go a little wider with our view again. And this time we're going to think about where we're going with the rest of his face. This is a jigsaw puzzle. You do the bit that you can do. Don't try and overwork and look at it as a whole. You're going to just do the bit that you can do. It's all right. It's all right. I'm looking at this, his chin. I know it's black. I know it's easy, so I'm going to go into that right now with Payne's Grey, and I'm going to block in his little chin. And it's a solid chin, it's in absolute deepest, darkest shadow, and I want to come in there and work that chin. There we go, we're going over the masking fluid, up to his lip, bringing it round, up to his little white moustache. And I know that that's my cat's little face. This is a bit of neck in here, so we're going to have that. That's fine. And then whilst that dries, leave it alone, go somewhere else. It's all right. We can just do it a bit at a time. Bit at a time. I want to think about his paws last, because these are going to be closest to us, and if we don't, we're going to be working on them and making a mess, so do those last. Let's have a little think about this ear. It's furthest away, and we can get cracking on with that, can't we? It would be nice if we could have a little bit of a highlight down through that ear, so we can do that. We're going to do it the same way that we've done it with the spines of the wings. We're going to come through there, and we're going to drop a bit of water through here, and then with our Payne's grey we can drop the Payne's grey down and around underneath there, and then I can come in on top and I can do that up to there, and we come up to his little horn and we fill that in. I'm going to leave it like that because I like the way that's bled. I'm going to just leave it alone. That would be darker in there now. So I'm just going to introduce a little bit more in there, and again with a damp brush simply come in and blend. Now whilst that's all wet, everybody, it'd be a very, very good idea to come in to the tips of those ears and do this whilst he's wet. I might have the same problem here that I had earlier on. I might have to resort to the rigger brush. I think I'm going to. If in doubt, use a rigger. It's always worth having one of these in several different sizes so that you can come in here and we can just add all those extra little hairs. We don't want to paint over all of the white ones, but if we can get white ones and black ones, the white will look like little ka-chings, catch light on the tips of his ears. So can you see that, everyone? If I bring you in, you can see the tips of his little ears out a little bit. There we go. Let's do the other ear, and then we can see that. Same applies. I want to come up through the ear. Let's take the masking fluid off now. Everything's dry, so it's all right. That's it. I want to put some water up through this ear, up through here. Then I can use my paint to lay the colour in darkly underneath, through here. That's sitting on top of the masking fluid, up and through. And then I want to add that top layer. I think I'll do that with the finer brush. And if I come through here, look, I'm just leaving a slither there against that dark. Can you see it? Just a slither. Just a slither, just here. But next to it, I've got light against light. So I have to make that dark, and then I leave the light again. So light, let me bring you out. Light against dark, so that then the dark carries on from there. Oh, that was epic, wasn't it? I'll go through that again in a minute. Hang on. Rinse the brush, come in, and I just want to soften that like that, and whilst the ends of the ears are still wet, I'm going to go in with my Payne's grey and I'm just going to flick over those few hairs there, and then coming over those wings like that. Okay, so let's just talk this through properly again, you and I, to see what we are talking about. Through this ear, I can't have dark and dark, so I've got to leave a slither of light. But then when I get to this lighter area, I can't have light against light, so the edge of the ear suddenly becomes dark. But now I've got dark, the edge of the ear has to be light again. And then when I get out into this area, to get the contrast back, I have to have a dark ear against the lighter colour. So that is absolutely the most exquisite lesson, isn't it? It's light against dark, dark against light, light against dark, and dark against light. And that's exactly how it works. It has to be. And for the same reason, this area here now, I think the contrast there is rubbish. So what I would do with my rigger brush there, I would go in and I would come right the way along the edge of that ear now with my rigger brush, and I would tighten that up right through there. so that I've got that nice sharp edge so it stands out. You might want to come through, because I certainly do, and even do that along the whole edge of that ear. And I would do exactly the same coming into the other ear, and I would come through. Your contrasts have to be right. You have to have light against dark and dark against light, otherwise none of it works, none of it reads, it doesn't look right. This is all very scruffy, this horn here, so you see I'd come into that and I would tighten all of that up and smarten the edges of that, like so, and I would do the same on this edge. Because the contrast there, again, is rubbish. It's lost, isn't it? You can't see it looking at it from this angle, I don't think. So I would come into that and I would give that an edge, and I would come down there and I'd give that an edge. Light against dark, dark against light. Make it stand out. It has to. All right, everybody, you're doing okay. You're doing okay. When we're looking at his face now, we're looking at areas that have to be lighter, areas that have to be darker. He's got this little frown on. The highlight would be along the top of the frown and the shadow would be underneath it. And there are easy ways to do that. Let me show you. The other area where you'd have light is here, because this is this dark hair that's coming across here that makes this ruff. I notice with the ruff, I've lost my masking fluid down some of these lovely whiskers. Do we need to reinstate them? Yes, we probably do. And that's easy. We take our rigger brush again, and we take our mask again, and we're simply just going to lay those back in so that when we slap dark colour underneath, we can still see the white paper. And all we've got to do with that is bring this through here. So join up where you were, and take it through. And again, through here, take it through. You can, if you want to, do that afterwards, if you'd like to, with your white gouache. So that's entirely fine. But all I'd say to you is you can't beat white paper. It's wonderful. It shows up. So for me, I'm just going to stick with my white paper. I'm simply going to do that. I just wanted to show you that it's possible to do that. You don't have to worry about having lost your masking fluid. Just go back and reiterate what you've done, and it's fine. It's fine. How long did that take me? We're done. That's it. Okie dokie. We are going to start at the top of his head, and let me talk you through it, bit by bit by bit by bit. I have a couple of brushes in my hand so that I've got thick and thin. I can get in there and I can work it. Therefore, I'm going to bring you out so that you can see. Maybe a bit closer than that. How's that? Is that looking all right for you? I think so. Maybe a bit more. Want to see. Okay, starting at the top, definition we need. So that edge, to me, says I've got to be really dark. Thick, neat, Payne's grey, straight out of the palette. Just enough water to make it emulsion thick if you'd be painting your walls at home. Therefore, coming down the side of his horn, round the top of his head like that, to the other horn, bring it down, and that gives me my dark. But hey ho, I'd like a little bit of highlight on the top of his head. I'm going to go there, and then I'm going to use a smaller brush and some water. Just going to run that in there like that, so that we have our highlight. Don't like that straight edge, so just pull it through. Bring some through, that's fine. I'm coming in here, round the horns, like that. This is the edge of his ear. We're coming down. Cats are really, really quite dark in this area here. Down here, meet the ears, join the ears. And then you get to here, and this by the nose can be quite pale. So I'm going to come down to there, come round the eye like that. I want it to be dark against the nose, like that. And then with my smaller, damper brush, I'm just going to do that. Keep it clean. Otherwise, if you move it around too much, you'll find that the brush gets mucky. I've gone over his nose there. I'm going to leave it alone. It's easier to clear up when it's dry. It's easier when it's dry. I'm taking that in, round his eye there, and around the muzzle there. That's the tear duct on that side, so that's fine, happy with that. Okay, so he's frowning here. I want light here and I want some light here. Therefore, if I come in and I pull that through there, we're going to put some hair in his ears in a minute, so let's not get excited about that for now. That means above his eye there, I'm just going to use water to do that. There we are. Okay, same on the other side, bring that through and around here. And then we use the water just to bring that down to the eye like that. I can't wait to get the masking fluid off those eyes so that it shines. It'll be exciting. I want to leave that alone for just a little minute because I need to go in there very darkly in a minute, and I can't do that when it's wet. I want a hard line there. Leave it alone, we'll deal with that in a minute. The next thing we can do now is come out here and do these lovely great big jowls that he's got, this ruff of Felix type fur. And to deal with that, what I want to do here is bring the hair right out through here and over some of his paws. We're going to lose definition there immediately, but we'll pull that in later with some white gouache. For now, I want a nice tight edge against that lovely white furry muzzle. You might decide that you want some white hairs out there. I'm going to do that later. Here we go, we're going to have a go at the muzzle. I want to take my brush, fill it with some Payne's Grey, and this time I want to come in here and give myself this lovely sharp edge around his white moustache. I want it very dark against that eyeball, into the nose, like that. And then this is a dark area in here, so that I just wanted a bit lighter. I'll deal with that in a minute. For now, we're going to put this in here, and you're going to fluff it in the same way that you did earlier with his tail. That area up there, just do it with some water, everybody, just like that. And fluff this. He's got this real Felix thing going on. Okay, don't worry about that too much because in a minute we're going to do his little paws. That at the moment is what we used to call when I was a kid alakethic. It's not important at the moment. Through here, other side, swipe that round the muzzle, round the eye. Now this is dry, so this side I can make that lovely and dark in there. That gives him the frown. I don't think he's really frowning. He's just looking at you from under his eyelashes, isn't he? Under his brows. And now I want to come out. And now you can see that beautiful work that you've done with your masking fluid. And how well that's worked for you. There you go. Okay. We've done that. We're going to do exactly the same now in his ears. Everybody, here. Here. Smaller brush this time. And again, lots of Payne's Grey. And now I want to come into here. This little cat has serious ear hair. There you go. So pull it through. There we are. Like that. More difficult from this side. If you find it easier, by all means turn your work round the other way. I know it sounds balmy, but if you turn it upside down, you'll find it works. Because it is difficult doing this. I'm struggling. I said this was dark in here, didn't I? So I want to come in there and into there, dark in there, down and round that eye, and then I want it dark in, down, round there, because it's the darkness that makes his eyes look so light and so bright. This is the important thing. I'm just going to put the division in the muzzle there. I'm going to just hint at that through there. So that gives him that cheeky, chappy grin, like that. We've got to do the teeth, but that's all right, we'll do those in a minute. Smarten up any lines that you need to smarten up. I would, if it was me, I would come across those eyes and right through there I would put dark. See the difference that makes between one eye and the other? So I would do the same there. I'd put that through there and make that dark. If it were me, I would come through the rest of those ears now. Why does that always happen? Fumble finger moment, eh? And I would use my rigger brush now and I would pull that. I would really introduce the hairs across his ears like this. So again, fill the whole brush. When you're using a rigger brush, you put the whole brush in the paint, all of it, and then just get rid of the runs and the drips. But you must fill the whole brush. It is a reservoir, and that's exactly how it's supposed to be used. You don't just dip the tip in, the whole brush, so that you can get the maximum amount of use out of the paint load. There you go. Ooh, look at that socks, what do you think? There you go. Alright, now the only other thing that I would like to do there to make that quite authentic is to go back to the horns and just where it meets his head, I would like to pull hair up through there, like that. You can also use this brush if you want to pull some hairs through here. I'll show you yet another technique to try. I'm not going to do it like that because I want to show you another technique that you can use for that. So hold fire on that for a minute. Let's do his paddy paws. What we need to remember here, what's very important is that there's highlight on each of those pads. Each pad would have a highlight on it. Therefore, in the same way that you've done your other highlights through the rest of the painting, this needs definition here. I want to take it round the little claw, and I know for a fact that the underneath of the pad would have dark. So if I do that, then I use water and I pull that through. Right, so that gives me my highlight on the paw. I'm going to bring you out just a little bit so that you can see what I'm doing. Leave that one alone, it's wet, so let's just go to the third one. So here I want it dark underneath, dark around the claw. Take that in underneath the claw, paw there. I want that dark because it won't show up otherwise, and then I'm just going to come in there and have a bit of a zhuzh there. Leave this alone, it's still wet. Let's go to the side. So round here, that outer edge, underneath here, round. There we go. Up against this edge here, where it's against the cat's face. Water and just gently manoeuvre. There we are. So what happens now, if we come into this one down here, this is all going to be beard anyway, isn't it? So down and round. Load up again. I want, that's gungy paint, hang on. So up, round. Give myself a decent edge. Rinse, dab, come in and soften. Now hang on a minute, you say, because you've got dark there, you can't have dark. What are we going to do here? Well, this one is the one that catches you out, isn't it? What we're going to have to do here is introduce dark here, dark around there, and there. And then we're going to do that and that, because we've got to have a slightly light edge along there and along there, and we know we want it lighter in the middle. Okay, so same applies this side. Load up, jigsaw. It's a jigsaw. Round here, dark. Round here, dark. Round the edge of the claw sheath, dark. And then I'm going to come down there. And I'm going to come down there. So that I can nudge that out to the edge gently with a bit of water so it's still grey. And then I can have my highlight in the middle. Now, some people love this, some people hate this. This is just me and this is the way I like to do things. But those claws, I don't like them just as they are. If that was me, I would be going for my Payne's Grey and the very, very tip of my brush. And I would carefully, carefully, carefully do that. Would you like to come in a little bit so that you can see? Let me move the painting. I want to have an edge to my claws. So thin, thin brush, thin paint on the brush, and I want to come all the way round. With steady hand. But I want my claws to have nice sharp edges. I don't want them to be wibbly wobbly. I want them to be defined. And this is a technique that as an artist you hate, you loathe, or you will enjoy and get on with it. And for me, I like to be able to, I mean, I'm not painting realism here, am I? Let's be frank. What Frank's got to do with it, I don't know. Should we ask Frank after coffee? But don't allow people to bully you. You do what you like. This is your painting and your choices, and you do what you want to do. I am not painting realism. I don't expect it to be amazing, but for me, I want to have that bit of definition. Now, whilst we're up close and personal, where I went wibbly wobbly on that nose there, I'm going to use a little stubby brush, and it's going to be just damp. So that's this one again. Oh, can you see that? Yes. And I just want to come in there, and I'm going to just lift out where I made that little bit of a wobble on his nose. Just so that I get his nose back, because I feel like I've lost his nose, bless him. Okay, right, we're getting there, everybody. It's getting there. I think some of the fine tuning is interesting. when you're doing things like this, because if you take those fingernails and you take the horns, and we go back to our lovely colour, we used raw sienna and burnt umber, didn't we? And if we use that, we can come into those horns and we can just put a crease up through the horn like that and that. And then if you do the same with the little claws and run, not so much that one, run these extra lines through. I'm going to bring you in a little. And it just gives you that line that you very often get on a claw. So that works well there. I need to, whilst you're close, round the nostrils. I would, if it was me, be doing that, and I would be doing that, and I would do that, and I would come down here like that. I also would like to refine that so that I can see it, see the definition there. We need to now be thinking about doing something with these teeth. But whilst we are still drying actually in that area, let's come out a bit, because with his back and his tail, bring it down, and I'm coming in again. Sorry everybody, I'm jumping about a bit, but what I want to do here is show you some of the techniques that I might use there. This is my stubby brush again, and I need it quite dry. And I'm going for my Payne's Grey. And I really, really do want it quite dry, so I'm coming in there and I'm scrubbing, because a lovely effect is just to come in and texture it. And this is, we were talking about dry brush earlier on, and this is dry brush at its very best. Coming in, you're coming in, hold on to your hats. Because I'm just coming in and I'm just texturing it. Just like that. It's very cruel to your brushes. You can soften your edges this way as well, by coming around the edges with a bit more paint. This is a lovely, lovely way if you're working pet portraits and you are, you've got a short-haired cat and have all those teeny, tiny, tiny little hairs on their faces and on their noses. And my goodness, this really works for that. There you go. So that's one way that you can give that a bit of texture and a bit of movement. Now the other thing that you can do here is you can use, this is a coma brush, and you've probably seen these. Some companies call them rakes, but this is a rosemary and it's called a coma, and it's all the edge of it has been cut into, so it gives you this effect of a comb. And what I want to do with this is again some dry brush work here, and I can use my Payne's Grey. You do not want that much paint in the brush. I will show you why. If I come out of it and we use the tail as an example, with that much paint in the brush, you can get some lovely thin hairs on that tail, look. Can you see where I'm going with that? Can you see what I'm doing, everybody? I wonder if I can show you a little easier. So paint on the brush, so this is with wet paint on the brush. And again, this is super for your pet portraits, because it turns the hair that you've been doing into something a lot more fluffy. And this little monster's quite fluffy. You can use the flat brush like this, but you can cut using it sideways to bring it through as well. So where I've got these quite hard edges here, this is where I would come in and I would work those hard edges. So using quite a bit of paint. Come in, soften all of that, all of it. And turn that into fluffy rather than spiky hair. So a useful little tool. So if you've got one of those in your kit, it's worth a bit of practice because you have to get the quantity of paint exactly right. There you go. But we can turn him into quite a fluffy little monster as opposed to this spiky little monster. Now this works just as well when you come into this area here. Less paint, everyone. And you're going to use that very sparingly because we're now putting hair. Can you see that on? Yes, you can. So don't go mad with that. Just want to give the impression of fur. And twist the brush so that you're getting flat and sideways use. And then we can do some of that in there as well. Yeah. So that's where I would be going with a textured brush to just get the final bits of fur in. I think I would also like to do some of that in his ears. Like that, you see, so that it gives you some fluffier ears. There we are. Out here. So I'll do a bit more of that and I will come back to you in a minute. We're on the final leg now. Let's do the last bit together and really watch this come to life. We need to remove the masking fluid. Whilst you've been gone, I've just painted the little teeth in and I've gone all the way round them with my black paint just to define the edges. Let's now see where we are with our masking fluid and how this has worked for us. So coming through here and taking our little whiskers off like this, what can we see? What has been lost? Now we finally get to see whether it was all worth it. Where did it work? Where didn't it work? And what do we have to do now to make it better? There we are. The eyes, there's that little bit of white fur there, so that's fine. On there, on the muzzle, that's just perfectly right for him. Now, that highlight out of the eye, that highlight out, and now ka-ching! How about that? Refine it, everybody, refine it, refine it, refine it. Using your smaller brush and the Payne's Grey, we need to come round there and really, really make that round. Make sure that's sharp. So sharp down there and make sure that that edge is rounded, not fluffy. We also need to come through there and do that, and we need to come through there and do that. Can you see what I've done there? I've gone round the eyes and I've gone around the edge of the iris, and just to really make it, bring it home, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that. There we are. And that makes that stand out really ka-ching. Eyes. Here and here, because that is all a little bit harsh, damp brush, come in, soften. Just mix the paint that's there, the grey, you're picking up colour that's underneath and just blending it onto the ends of the whiskers to make them sort of, to bury them in his face. The problem here is we've lost the definition on these whiskers as they come into his face. Remember what we were saying about this wing? We now come into pale Payne's grey, because what we're going to do is where this whisker comes in, we're going to do that, and we're going to do that. Excuse me. And we're going to come through, and we're going to do that, and that, and we're going to bring that through there, and there, and there. Join that up. We need to make sense of this. So where we have light, we have to have dark, and where we have dark, we have to have light. It's just the law. It's the way it has to be with watercolour. You cannot make sense of it if this isn't right. In the same way, when we look at this through here, we don't have any great extension through here. The way to do that now, because white wouldn't work, it wouldn't give us pack enough of a punch. Coming out through there, and I'm extending these whiskers this way. So there's more than one way to deal with this. You've got to just look at it and try and work out how you can play the game that you've got. So this whisker out, pull, pull, pull. Ooh, dry brush mark there, and that's because I didn't have enough paint in the brush. Can I get away with it? Yes, probably. There you go. This one here, you're coming out through there. So all of this you can rectify. You can deal with all of that. This here, out through here. This whisker. Get hold of that, pull it. This one, pull it. So just see what you can adjust. Okay, in a minute, having realised I've done that, I think I'm going to land up losing that when I do this bit of wing. Finally, we want to now do the wings and just add a little bit of white. If you want to detail with white, I would use, this is a lid to a cat milk, Mister's cat milk, and I put my white gouache in here because I find that if I put it in my palette, it leaves this horrible chalky mess. I hate it. And to use gouache properly, you probably are talking about single cream. So work it until you've got the right texture. And then here, where this fur is coming down onto his paws, now is the time for you to be painting white. And just where the brush goes down on the paper, touch it to soften the hard edge, the hard blob. So that would give you textured fur across his paws if you wanted it. Anything that you've missed with white here, you can go in now and you can just use this to join up any dots. So if we've got these hairs across here and you want to add them, do it now, right now with your white. So use that for those jobs there. Okay, so a good white gouache for that. That will work super duper. Now, the last thing I want to show you is how I would just put a wash over this, how I would glaze to give him some sort of diaphanous wings that are almost not there. Here goes for the final stages. I've masked out these 3 whiskers because I don't want them to blend or blur or to lose the white of this one here. We're going to do the wing here. And I'm simply going to use Payne's Grey. I need thin colour. I don't need to come in here and be excitable over it. Actually, I might mix it with that bit of reddish colour that I have there. That could be quite interesting. Let's see where that leads us. And I want it thin. So we're looking at thin colour. And all I want to do here is be brave and fearless. I'm absolutely loading the brush. I'm using a big number 8. And for this, I'm coming in here and I'm literally going to lay it over the whole of my green area, my background, like this. Pull it through. Don't fluffy brush for me, just pull it straight through. And don't let it dry, because of course if it dries then we've got the issue of a hard line. And with the darker, thicker black paint, I just want to come up around that outer edge through there. Just like that. And that will give us the impression of these dragonfly thin wings. And that wing is folding back on itself so that you can see that it's coming through this side of the wing, the spine, through there. And again, I want to just use the darker colour, the thicker paint, to go up that edge there. We can still see everything through it. We can still see all of this detail. It's all there, still there. But we've got this thin, thin wing. This painting is all about a cat who wished he could fly, really. And on this side, we're going to come down to somewhere around about here, as though the wing goes in underneath the foliage. Therefore, make sure you have enough colour. Do not run out halfway through something like this, it's a disaster. So have enough colour, lots of paint. And I want to come in here and I'm going to simply lay a waterline so that I come down to that. So pick up colour. And you really do have to be bold and brave. Load the brush so that you can do it in as few brush strokes as possible, and we're going to bring that down into the water area like that so that we're still seeing everything underneath like that. I might have to reinforce this bit of whisker, but that's all right. And I'm just going to lay in slightly darker colour through there to give a bit of shadow under the wing, like that. And this is our bit of dandelion, so I'm just going to lift a bit of colour out of there, like that. And I'm going to leave that at that. If you wanted some sort of foldy, creasy bits in that wing, take a slightly darker grey, take a bit more colour, and all you've got to do is that. Just keep those brush strokes to the absolute minimum, because the more you put in there, the more you're going to move what's underneath. Now I'm quickly going to dry that, and we've got one last thing to do and you should have a finished painting. Finally, all I would really like to do here now is just introduce a few bits and pieces for the foreground. This is what we call a sword liner brush. This peculiar shape, but it gives you some lovely, lovely lines. And I want to use this with, it takes quite a bit of paint, this particular brush. I'm going to use the Cascade Green, and this is the Prussian Blue. And with those two colours, I want to just come into my foreground and introduce a couple. This is quite a dead area through here. So I'm just coming from off the page and I'm going to bring this brush up to introduce just a few interesting leaves. Just to make this a bit, to give it a bit more. And to balance it, I want to pop something through here. Like that. Not too much, everybody. And as it comes down into the middle of the picture, less, smaller, just to bring you into the picture. I would like to be thinking about my lovely pompons of dandelion. So with those I want a darker colour. Let's see if we can do it just with the tip of this. So just the finest tip. I want to come down and through. A little bit thicker maybe. Because that one I'm just going to pull it and then allow it to vanish. This one here, down through here. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because that actually makes it look now as though he's underwater. Interesting. Interesting. And finally, I want to take my big round brush and I'm going to come in here with some of the orange. This is the cadmium orange. And again, in this area here, I just want to... Red and green are two colours that are complementary colours and they make each other sing. And therefore, orange being in the same category there, I just want to pull that through here so that you have some little wild flowers around our pussycat. And that is where I'm going to leave it. So there you have, ladies and gentlemen, my little socks, who thinks he might be a dragon, maybe, and he wishes he could fly. And I hope that that's been of some use to you and that the techniques have been interesting. But I've thoroughly enjoyed being with you today to share this experience. Thank you for opening this video. Bye for now. See you in the studio again soon.